We need to start genocides. We need to start the genocides now, and we must do them every 2 years. Sorry, right, off topic.
Right. So, welcome to Real Talk. If you've never been here before, we're just gonna go around in a circle asking some questions and abiding by these rules, which I'm gonna go over right now. Rule number 1, 2-minute rule, meaning if you want to provide your point by joining us in this event, and we go around the circle and it's your turn, please try to keep your idea, experience, story under 2 minutes, because there's a good tick of people in here, and when you go on for 5 minutes, we run out of time and we can only do 4 questions. So yeah, just try to keep it under 2 minutes. Rule number 2, respect the circle, meaning if we're going around the circle, don't talk out of turn, meaning don't interrupt someone or try to argue with someone while they're making their point or while it's someone else's turn in the circle. Rule number 3, ask to open the God door, meaning if you want to bring up a religious topic, you're welcome to, but just, say, is everyone cool with me opening the God door? And if everyone is, you can go ahead, because a lot of people aren't comfortable with opening the God door. Not a lot of people are comfortable talking about religion. Rule number 4, respect when the topic is over, meaning if we're trying to move on with us. And rule number 5, cut up when needed, because needed is often. Right. So we're gonna get into our first question, but I need to take a quick look-see at our questions list, because I didn't take a look at the submissions yet. Whoops. Okay. Hold on. Okay. So the first question is, does genetics or environmental factors play into intelligence, or a mix of both, or neither? Neither. We go around in this circle. Yeah. Cool.
I think they do, because animals and such are always affected. If you believe in the fuck up. If you believe in the evolution theory or any other scientific theory, I would say yes, definitely. That's about it. I mean, it's a very simple question. Can't go wrong. I
All
pass
right.
it to the next one.
Oh boy. Vitor, I hope.
Hi.
Hi.
So, actually, I'm not very. I don't have so much knowledge about this to talk up this topic. So I'm not really confident to say uh, something that really, I don't know.
Just read the bell curve.
No problem. Right.
So,
Bell curve talks about
pass
this.
this one.
If you want to inform yourself, the book called The Bell.
Yeah, sorry.
I agree with Hi and Low. I do think genetics plays a role in intelligence, especially when we look at countries like Africa, who, they have mud huts and shit like that. We have Europe, we have cathedrals, you have all sorts of shit, And when Europe went to Africa, they didn't have the wheel. How do you think you can have a civilization when you can't even build a wheel, And there's multiple studies on this sort of stuff. So yeah, I do think both environmental factors and genetics plays a role on intelligence. But it's mostly genetics.
All right. Michael Jordan.
I agree too. I think it definitely plays a role. And it plays a role in not only intelligence, but basically everything else. I mean, look at the disparity across like the entire continent. I mean, different types of intelligence, different customs, different religions. I don't really have that much to add. I'll pass.
We're going quick this time. Gringy.
All right. I think it's. I guess you have to talk about the real difference between I guess there's how quickly you can learn and what you know. I mean, most of us here know more about the world than people 100 years ago did. But I wouldn't say that we're necessarily more intelligent than them. It's just we have more information at our fingertips. I think intelligence is more about how quickly you can learn, which I think is probably more to do with genetics than environment. Although if you're put in an environment where you were forced to learn quickly, then you probably get better at it.
All right. Jay,
Oh, what was the question?
does genetics or environment
Just
play
kidding.
into intelligence?
Just joking. Sir.
Okay.
I'm not very intelligent, but no, I would have to say it's you put
Is
enough
that
work
because of
into
your
something.
genetics or your environment?
Probably my genetics, but just fell on my head a few times. That wouldn't be genetics, so that would just be bad luck. But anyhow, I would say you put enough work into anything, and you can be good at anything. So you can train a monkey to do a lot. If you put enough studying in, you can accomplish whatever goals you have.
All right.
I don't know.
Mikey.
I think environment. I think eugenics. I think genetics does play a role, but I think more environment because you learn from your environment. So how did the first person who was ever here learn if it was all from genetics? You'd have to learn from the environment first of all. So I think eventually in our time, it plays more of a role now than environment. But I think originally environment more than anything else. To be honest. Thank you.
Nugget.
I think genetics definitely play a role, but I think it's more of how hard you work to be smart.
Oh, I think that guy's AFK Milo.
He just happened to be here.
Okay, so I still would lean more towards environment than genetics. I recently listened to a podcast, the Scientific American, where this lead geneticist guy was arguing that, almost everything is genetics, that even things we think we're choosing of our own free will, really, when you look at it, boils down to our genetics. You know, maybe that's true, but then again, even if it is, how do you, I don't know. That's a very uncomfortable thing to think, that we, live in a deterministic world where nothing is our choice. So even if it is true, if you think about that, you'd go crazy. So it's within our own self-interest to think that's not true. So I think it's healthy to think of the world as something that you can control to some extent. Am I going to say that is totally 100% the truth? No. But we all have to choose how we look at things.
Smoke weed every day.
Yeah, hi. I think it's a combination of things for sure. Look, even in Western culture and American culture, if you look at very poor schools, if you're considered smart, you're looked down upon. You're seen as a nerd, and people often try to get worse grades to seem cooler, right? So there's no incentive to be smart. So their environment already failed them. Look at countries like China, where it's like they want you to be smart. It's like a competitive, highly sought after trait to be intelligent. So in China, there's a lot more emphasis played on being smart, and you're rewarded for being smart because that's the environment. That's what they want out of you. They want you to be smart. Whereas in like a low income neighborhood, they'll be like, hey, yo, this dude nerd, dude. Look, he's got his books. Oh, he go to class. Look at this nerd. And they don't even want to go to school. They want to go home. They want to sell drugs. So, it's a combination. It's the environment, but it's about, if you look at how they're nurtured, in Africa, it doesn't really make much sense to be smart in Africa. All you got to do is hunt and gather, right? You just got to get food. The smart guy, they just kill the smart guy, take his money. You know what I mean? There's not enough infrastructure there. So I think it's definitely a combination of both things.
Nomadic is good.
Alright, now is the time where we open up. If you would like to speak now, the rule here is speak first to be spoken over. So, does anyone disagree, agree, or want to challenge someone to ritual combat?
So,
Yep, just speak.
I would ask you, smoke weed every day. I would say, what's your definition of smart? I think that's a very narrow way of looking at what smart even is. Because, for example, it might be quote unquote smart for someone to focus on skills that aren't necessarily your book skills, right? And if that's a very vague term, right? Because that can apply to a lot of things as well. What do you consider white collar versus blue collar? Someone even told me there's a term pink collar now. I actually don't know what that refers to, but I know it exists. But anyway, I think there are different kinds of intelligence, right? You've got emotional intelligence. You've got ability to process and gather information. So I just wanted to say that's a very narrow way of looking at what being smart, quote unquote, is, I think.
Oh, of course. I mean, I have to generalize here, but it's hard to say that you can't define what smart means. I mean, emotional intelligence sounds like a contradiction because if you're heavily emotional, you probably aren't making intelligent decisions. You kind of learn that as you get older to not be quite so emotional. But as for the whole like blue collar, white collar thing, yeah, sure. Look, you could be a blue collar worker and you can be smart. Maybe you don't want to make that much money. Maybe money isn't as important to you, but typically white collar workers will earn more per year on average. But again, maybe you're not greedy like that. So I don't really think it's that big of a deal.
I would personally say I think you have some learning to do of your own, but hey, this isn't a show about personal opinions. It's about what we think the truth of the matter is. So,
Well, you didn't need to say that then.
True.
It seemed like a personal attack.
Anyway, I think we're ready to move on to the next question, right? Yeah? Alright, so the next question is pain the best teacher?
What? What's the question?
Is pain the best teacher?
What is that supposed to mean? I don't get you right now.
Does pain teach the people the best? Like, is it the best to learn from pain?
No, oh shit, I misclicked. I would say like, so you're talking about parenting and stuff like that, right? And like
Anything,
jail
and any interpretation you want.
I say it's personality based, or that could be one of the environmental stuff that we were talking about. I'm pretty sure it's environmental, and you would probably always, if you're like always agreeing, always satisfied, I don't think you would need to be hit or something to do something. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's environmental.
Alright? Smoke weed every day.
I think the best way to learn is out of fear. Can I open the God door? Hello?
It doesn't bother me.
Sure.
You can go ahead.
Fine with me.
Okay.
Good, man?
Anyway, so
Sure.
Everybody good? All right. So in the Bible, all Christians know that they fear God, right? And who do you listen to more than anybody in the world as a Christian? God. Why? Not because he hurts you.
Please
I asked.
stick to rule number 3.
I just asked.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. My bad. I was zoned out.
Are you smoking weed every day?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, we're all okay with it. So listen, like I was saying, as Christians know, we don't listen to God because, like, he's cool, because he's funny. We do it out of fear, right? So I think that's the best way to learn. 100%. Not pain, but fear.
Alright, that man's running away, so I guess we're gonna go to Michael Jordan.
Thinking deep thoughts.
Is pain the best teacher? I don't know. Pain seems like a vague term. I guess maybe you have to define what you mean by pain. I think failure is probably the best teacher. If you're talking about like actually learning lessons in life, if you're talking developmental, and if we're getting into a discussion on like, I mean, is pain actual pain? Are we talking about corporal punishment? Are we getting into like a discussion on spanking or something like that? I can't really talk to that. I think that's generally viewed in a negative way nowadays. But I kind of agree that fear is also, a teacher. Fear of God for some, and, the fear of other things. I don't know. For me, I guess to answer that question fully, I would need to know what exactly we mean by pain. But that's all I had, and I'll pass.
Right, Grimsby, my bad.
Yeah, I was actually thinking a similar thing. By pain, can you mean anything from failure to emotional pain to, and because there's a lot of different ways to phrase pain.
You've been here
If we're
long
talk-
enough. You know that the answer is that you're supposed to interpret the question. You know better.
Yeah, I know. I just want to. Actually, what am I doing? So if emotional pain, I mean, I think most of us are, and maybe not taught, but act out our daily lives in an attempt to try and avoid emotional pain as much as possible, which I guess in a way teaches you or informs you or creates the person that you are, because you do not want to be, well, either you don't want to be an asshole or you don't want to be the person you don't want to be. So you try and conform to what you think is right, and through that you sort of teach yourself. But then again, everything's subjective, so never mind.
All right, Jay.
Well, going back to like say if you wanted to teach an animal something, they teach it through pain. And if they got a rat running through a maze and looking for cheese, and they'll have a electrode there to shock it, so no, it went the wrong way, it'll turn around and go back. So I mean, in the basic animal teachings, pain seems to work, but I mean, if you've got kids or people, it doesn't work that way. As far as you're not going to learn from shocking someone. They're just, or fear for that matter. You could say, well, fear. What about love? You can learn from love too. So, but reward system, right? That's all I got.
I think you can learn from pain. I think you can learn from everything in life, to be honest. I think it's a whole part and parcel of everything. So I think, yeah, pain is a good teacher, but also knowledge is a good teacher as well. So it all goes hand in hand, I think. I'll pass it on.
Right. Oh, we're going really quick.
I completely agree. Um, that was a very good answer, Mikey. I think we
Thank you.
learn from everything in life. Um, there are certain types of information that I do think one thing is, or one way of learning works better than others. But it's hard to tell what that is ahead of time until you've gone through it. So it's kind of that, hindsight is 20/20, as they say, right? You never know what works until you've seen what doesn't work. Um, so, but the thing is that there's also no end to learning, right? So if you ask a master of something, right? You go to someone who's, I don't know, let's say a painter, right? And they've been painting portraits for 40 years. 99% of the time, you will ask them, are you done? And they'll say, no, I'm learning every day. So I really think the framing of learning is a little bit wrong in that people say, oh, you're trying to get somewhere. Well, guess what? There is no somewhere because that somewhere is always a moving target. So, but if we didn't at least have, you know, blocks along the road that we are trying to go towards, we wouldn't really have any direction at all. So while that is handy to have, kind of guideposts along the way, I think we have to keep in mind that there is no end of the road. The only end of the road is, a little bit depressing, but, when we're under the ground. So, yeah, so that's, I think that's what I would say. Also, that learning, a lot of times, and we've brought up education on this show in the past, a lot of times people automatically assume when you're talking about learning, you're talking about a very structured, systematic thing. And if you stub your toe on a table, guess what? You just learned not to do that again. Kind of like, we were talking about with pain, right? But that's also, it's not in some system of learning, right? It's not a course. It's not anything like that. So we learn just by living our lives. Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
Right. So, now is the time when we open up. So if you disagree, agree, or just want to start a fight, now is your opportunity. The rule here is speak first to be spoken over.
Yeah, I
Anyone
gotta
want to
call this
elaborate?
guy out that was talking about love, making us learn things. I mean, it's I would say, I mean, maybe he's right. He's half right, right? Because love does teach us something. It teaches us how weak and stupid we were once you learn, that you made a mistake. A wise man once said, you don't want to fall in love with a woman. You want the woman to fall with you. Because guess what? If you fall in love with her and she's not in love with you, she's going to leave your ass, especially if you have money. She's going to leave your ass with the kids, and she's going to take all your money and your house and everything. So, but also, I also want to touch upon that with one other point, okay? Two people, there's no such thing as two people being in love at the same time. The only way it can work is when one person falls in love. There's no magical, oh, I'm in love with you. Oh my gosh, what a coincidence. I'm also in love with you. It's not really the reality. So if you're going to fall in love, don't do it. Make them fall in love with you. That's just sort of where I wanted to point out. Mikey probably was trying to say that maybe, and I misunderstood. But I don't think you don't learn anything from loving them. You learn when they break up with you and they break your. That's
There's always
the
one
truth.
person that seems to love you more. In a relationship, there's always one person out of the relationship that loves more than the other one, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you say, I don't think you're both totally in love with each other at the same time. I mean, you can be, but I always find that there's always one that loves the other more, and the other one takes a little bit, not
100%.
deliberately. Not deliberately. So you're right. I agree with you. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
That's all I wanted to fight with him about. But it looks like we agree.
Yeah, yeah. I
You
agree
want
with
to
you.
you want to get a couple punches in there too? Scruff him up a little bit, hold his hair.
No, he would beat me.
Right. So, let's get on to the next question, which is, I probably should get this prepared before I run right into it like an idiot. Hold on, getting there.
What, you getting there being an idiot? Oh.
Okay, I've been an idiot. You underestimate me. So, is everyone familiar with the concept of a Thanos snap, eliminating half the population
Yeah.
of all organic life? Personally, what do you think that would mean for humanity?
Well, okay. So, if you're gonna reference Marvel, I'm gonna reference an anime. It's called Death Note. I think it would be
Oh,
useful.
yeah.
I think if we truly killed, and we killed half the population, I think it would be fantastic. There's plenty of people that, a lot of people would probably agree that we could just eliminate. And if we had the Death Note, and if we had that little black, that monster guy working for us, listen, it could be incredibly useful. Rather than just some purple idiot just snapping his finger. I don't think he knows what he's doing, but in the right hands, I think we can really, hone this power and really use it for the better of mankind.
Hmm.
Now, whose hands we put it into, that's the tricky question. Maybe one of you guys know the answer to that.
A little caveat to this question: should it be random?
No, I mean, I think we should decide
No.
who gets the notebook.
Yeah,
The question is who.
I was just gonna say like the exact same thing, but I also want to kill the people that are overpopulating. Like many of you would say like half of the population, but is it half the population for each country, or like how's it being chosen? And that's the point I wanted to make too. Like if you wanna kill half of the population, you want to kill the correct ones. So I don't think I can add anything to what Smokeweed they said already. So I'm gonna pass it on.
Right.
I agree that we need to choose like who we eliminate. I guess we could say, especially when we have child mortality rates so low as they are right now. People with weak DNA are able to survive, whereas many years ago they would just die at infancy. So if we choose people with DNA to, die, then they won't pass their DNA on to further generations. That's why you have so many diseases like you do today. So we also have to choose within certain countries, not just like overpopulated countries.
Right, Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. This is kind of, to me, I don't know. Is it bad that this is a funny question to me because it's kind of ridiculous? But of course, I mean, common sense. I mean, you could eliminate half the population on the planet. I mean, we would benefit from it if you could decide who was eliminated. If you just randomly eliminated half the population of the planet, it could be detrimental. Sorry. I mean, if certain, important people that served important functions got eliminated and we were left with people that didn't contribute too much, that could be extremely detrimental. But if it was, something that was thought out and the people that, meant less to the progress of the human race or to the planet itself, then yeah, I'm sure we could benefit from it. Environmentally, advancement of our species. I mean, everything. Like I said, it's a funny question, but I mean, that's my take on it. So I guess I also agree with smoke weed every day in his opinion.
You smoke?
Smoking weed.
He made a good point. I'm not gonna lie.
That's a great name, though.
I need to watch Death Note. I've never heard of that. It sounds good.
No, it's not really good.
Hey, I like Death Note. What's wrong with Death Note?
He's not as good as the actual comic. The film was rubbish. It was really disappointing. Anyway, we're not talking.
I'm talking about
that.
the anime, not the
No,
film.
that's true.
Oh, the anime.
Yeah, the
yeah,
live
that's
action
good.
was horrible. Sorry.
The
Yeah,
live
that was
action one's just pants. It's rubbish.
Anyway, Grimsby.
Well, I kind of disagree with everyone. Not to be a contrarian, but I think that even if you're doing it for the intended purpose of trying to reduce the overall population of the Earth, I think. Does anyone here know what a logistical curve is? Not a logistical curve, exponential curve.
Yeah.
It basically it's that if put very simply, if you have a set number of something and it multiplies over time, eventually that multiplication is going to get higher and higher and higher. It's like timesing something by 1.1. It's going to keep getting bigger and bigger until it's so big that you can't control it. If you half the population, I mean, after the population now has been growing massively, but only in the last 50 years or so. So in another 50 years, you're just going to have the same population and come back, not from people rising back from the dead like in the movie, but I mean just from being born, and you'll still have the same problem. Having the population once isn't going to fix the problem. I'm saying you need to keep having the population. We need to start genocides. We need to start the genocides now, and we must do them every 2 years. Sorry, off topic.
I feel like there's a more entertaining way. I feel like the
I
Hunger
really hope
Games
no one
is
heard
an
that.
option, but anyway, Mikey.
Oh, it's me. Well, do you know what? I think it's a really, really dangerous thing people are saying because we're talking about eugenics, really. And to be perfectly honest, the 1% controls all the planet. And whoever had the power to make that decision, the only people that would have the chance to make that decision are the ones that are already in power. So to be perfectly honest, the only people to get rid of is everyone sitting here because they can't stand us in the first place. So to be perfectly honest, if it was given into neutral hands that didn't have an agenda or a bias, then theoretically, yeah, maybe. But I disagree with anything when it comes to annihilating, or as Grimsby said, some form of genocide. You're taking life into your own hands. You're playing the power of, dare I say it, God into your own hands, and nobody has that right to do that. The planet has enough to sustain everybody, but we're told it doesn't. It's complete fabrication. So to be perfectly honest, yeah, bollocks, kill everybody. Yeah,
Right,
well, the red, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I take it all back. This is rubbish. I have to kill them all now, everyone, and
No, before
leave
you
us here.
answer,
Leave us.
let me
He's
just
on my
guess.
side.
AI?
Well, it depends. Okay. Okay.
The voice of
So
reason.
yeah, he knows me and he thinks I'm always going to answer the same way I answer in the past, so he thinks I'm that predictable, which I'm not all the time. But anyway, uh, point being, so you said something really interesting, Mikey, which was if you were to do that, you would have to do it in a non-biased way. And here's the thing. All of us have one of these in here, which is a human brain, which they are inherently biased. I don't care how much you think you're a logical person. I do that a lot, right? I'm like, oh, I think of things mathematically, like Grimsby was saying with the exponential curve, which, by the way, there's a good thought experiment on that. If you had 1 grain of rice and you double it, there was a whole story about a kid who all he asked was to double the grains of rice, and then by the end of the time, he had like tons of it. Anyway, point being,
I think the better example is that would you rather have make a penny every second or double the amount of money every minute?
right. Um, but anyway, the thing is that doesn't exist, and there is no such thing as a neutral. The only thing you could do is make it random. So you would basically just have people dropping dead randomly, driving down the street, and then just, and that would be, I mean, that would create chaos. So, I don't think it's a good idea. I think there has to be other ways of solving our problems. And if there is a way to create some sort of system, okay, now I'm slightly leaning the way you thought I would, but if there is a way to create some sort of system which would not be biased, and to help solve some of these issues without killing, then that would be great. Even though that's what I think would be a good idea, I don't know how practical it is. I'm still, I temper my beliefs that way. But anyway, I also think about this. The only thing that we're talking about here is the removal of life, not the prevention of life. So no one has mentioned, and I'm not saying this is a good idea. This is just as horrible. But think about it morally. We hate to think of killing people, right? Oh man, that's messed up. You're killing people. But then if you prevent a life from ever happening, uh, then that is effectively mathematically doing the same thing. You're preventing the population from increasing. And that is also really screwed up. But people don't, if it's done forcibly, but then if people do it by choice, which, let's think about the ways in which that happens. I think people can think where I'm going here. Is mathematically it's the same thing, and we have to figure out how we feel about it from a societal perspective. And I'm not gonna touch that with a 20-foot pole. I'm just gonna throw it out there. So I don't know. I don't think it would be a good idea. I think there are other ideas that could accomplish similar objectives, but I also think that needs a lot of foresight and checks and balances in order to be done correctly. That help?
Right. So now is the time where we open up. There's people joining right now. In a second, I'm going to explain. But if now is the time where if you want to disagree, agree, or just say some Shakespearean style insult, now is your time.
Well, I want to hear everybody's choice for if somebody had the Death Note, who would it be? Like, what would be your guys' pick? Each one of your guys' pick. Who would you give the Death Note to? Starting with myself, I would give it to the Lord Jesus Christ and let him decide. What about you, Hee Hee?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also give it to somebody religious. I don't think the term Catholic will be good enough. We just need. You're saying that as if like we need a functioning God right now, and that we don't have one. I think we do have a God, so we need to give it to a big authority like Donald Trump.
Okay.
That would have been my second pick. I like that answer.
I'd say either Jesus Christ or Donald
He
Trump.
hasn't done enough damage as it is.
Maybe the previous
Guys are down, Trump.
previous part would be good as well.
I don't know who
Jordan?
would get the Death Note. I've had conversations before about like the greatest leader of a country would be a benevolent dictator. It sounds ridiculous, but if someone was a dictator but they did everything right, they would be in essence the perfect type of leader. So I I don't know why I even brought that up. I don't know who would get the death note. I would probably say Jesus Christ is not a bad choice because I'm a religious person. But I did want to point out before I pass it on. I just wanted to say one thing, that when I said, when I was making all of these assumptions about eliminating half of the population, it got around to the other side, and people voiced opinions that they wouldn't do it. I if I had the button in front of me, I definitely would not eliminate half the population. I just wanted to make that point before I pass it on. Thanks.
Yeah, good point.
Before we continue, I was reminded of this thought experiment, not thought experiment, this idea someone came up with that what was it? It was okay, right. It was that the president, a volunteer, would have the nuclear launch codes implanted in their chest. So if the president wanted to fire nukes, they had to straight up murder someone and rip out their heart to launch and kill millions. And it was meant to show to the president, you kill this one guy, you're gonna kill so many others. Like it was like to put morality into the
Yeah, but
president's
whose heart?
hand.
Who's gonna get the like? You have to put it.
It
In
was
some
a
random
volunteer.
person?
A
Oh.
volunteer.
Yeah, but all he's got to do is just find a dick to put it into, and he wouldn't even mind killing him. He'd be like, yeah, fuck this guy. He doesn't help me out ever. I'm just gonna rip his heart out.
But I'm sure it wouldn't be up to the president who it was.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, Grimsby.
I'll say it after, but Keanu Reeves. The answer is always Keanu Reeves. I respect that some people think that Jesus Christ would be the best answer, but for some reason, I just feel like Keanu Reeves, in essence, would never do anything wrong in his entire life. So, I believe that's the correct answer. Anyway, secondly, Lolek, you said something. I don't think you meant it to sound in a very sinister way, but you said something about eliminating bad DNA. Do you mean like people with people who are suffering, or do you mean people with genetic disorders, or do you mean it in a really dark way, as in just people? Yeah, what do you mean by bad genetics?
Like either diseases or birth defects or weak people,
See, it's that part right there, the weak people, that really got me. Do you mean that just, for example, do you mean like people who are born slightly different? But are you mean like people born with autism, or people born with dwarfism, or people who are born blind, or what do you mean by weak
I mean,
people?
all of those things, right? You need to fill out that 50%. People with weak chins, that sort of stuff.
So just anyone you personally don't like. You don't see any problem
Weak
with that.
jawlines, people under 6 feet,
That's all of us then.
below 100 IQ.
So you wouldn't eliminate Stephen Hawking, though. So
He's already dead.
I know.
It doesn't count.
Okay, I just
Well, Stephen Hawking, he wasn't. Wasn't it like only like 30% of genetics that did that to him? The rest was like external stuff that happened to him or something like that. Because
He was
all,
faking anyway.
Possibly.
He was faking. He wasn't really in that chair. I saw him walk around in a library once and tell me to shut up.
Well, why didn't you kill him then?
I was so amazed with my mouth open that he was walking around and smoking a cigarette or a tab and just going, "You all right, mate?" I was quite shocked, really. But so
Stephen
yeah,
Hawking
and
was
then
British?
next time he is actually. He's from Cambridge.
Actually, can I rescind my answer? I want it to be quite literally anyone except for Lolek.
Pretty much.
Yeah. What was the question again?
Who has the death note?
that
For
was
people
it,
who
yeah.
don't know, Death Note is a fictional object where any person, if you write their name into it and the way they die, they do it within like what, 10 seconds? Or like a minute or something?
I think it was 40 seconds, wasn't it?
Yeah, 40 seconds. Like if you say, they will drown. You know,
Yeah, if you don't write
some
a
way.
reason, they die by a heart attack.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Right. Good feline.
Okay, well, since apparently the God door was open already, I would say that should go to God. He creates everything. He's the only thing.
Yeah, but God has it already. That's redundant.
He's the only
I suppose he
one
has, yeah.
that
Suppose he
can
has.
make the decision to give life or take it away. Period. In the story, no matter what you believe, that's just the way it is. So that would be my answer. Anything else is ridiculous. I'm finished.
Wouldn't
There
God
you go.
already have one? If he can do, if he's truly omnipotent, wouldn't he already have the ability to half the population that the
That's what I
snap
just
of a
said.
finger?
He's the creator of all things.
No, I mean like why? I'm just saying, why would you give him something? It's like giving someone a gun who already has a gun.
He already has it. Exactly.
It-
That's why I said anything else is ridiculous.
All right, yeah.
But if you guys remember in the Old Testament, God made the choice to stop killing man once he got
With a
pissed
rainbow,
off.
yeah.
He killed him a couple times, and he's like, you know what? Whatever. I'll let you guys kill each other. I'm done with this. You know?
It still doesn't change my answer.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I was just saying things because I like the sound of my voice.
Right, who's that? I know you just started. Jason, do you know what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the conjectures, but I think I got an idea of at least three. So, like, the first one, the Death Note, I would say, look, I don't necessarily believe in religious deities or anything like that. But to me, like, oh, yeah, you guys can hear me, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so, like, if I had to have, like, a solution, I'd say some kind of super intelligence of some sort, because I don't think any human really has a good grasp as to, like, solving that issue. Create or manufacture some kind of heuristic that can decide and create some kind of market incentives to make like a collective decision, then I'm more for that than giving it to one individual. That being said, that's just kind of my take. In terms of eliminating half the world, I mean, maybe it just requires a lot of like asterisks on that. And I forgot what the other one was. Like, yeah, but oh wait, I think there was a point that you made when it's like, okay, should we make it such that the president has to murder someone in order to send off a nuclear strike? I think that's a good idea, but the problem is that like you have to have like all countries agree to do that, right? Because if you have one country that has that stipulation and another country who doesn't give a fuck, given a crisis, you're only debilitating like immediate action, and you're like it's just self annihilate or hurt yourself in the process. But that's like my 2 cents.
With this?
Yeah, what he said. I don't know everybody. I don't know everybody is. Everybody's gone.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think what to say. Can you come back to me? I'll think.
Yeah. For the people that just joined it, you can come join us in the circle. We can go stand by the benches back there. You don't have to stay away. Everyone's welcome.
Yo, keep it short, Mellow.
Yeah, I got it. I don't know. I would say I like Jason's idea. But other than that,
AI?
yeah, but see the problem with AI is that we still feed it, right? So there's this idea that AI is completely neutral. I mean, I guess it depends on the architecture and things, but the problem is you still have to build it, and then in most cases, feed it with data, right? So in order to figure out what a cat looks like, 500 pictures of cats, and then it goes, oh yeah, there's a new one. That's a cat. the thing is there have been a lot of cases where bias creeps in just because we humans are the ones feeding it. And so if we can figure out a way to counter that, which actually academically a lot of people are trying to do, then yes, I actually totally agree with Jason in with, that would be a good system for helping to manage humanity, which sounds very authoritarian, but if it could be done in a way that everyone gets what they want, then I don't think it's necessarily negative. But I'm also a skeptical person, and who the hell knows if we dumb humans can manage to pull that off. So I'll throw that little nugget in there.
Can I say something
Okay.
about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody about this particular topic about artificial intelligence, and it turns out to solve a lot of these biasing issues, what you actually have to do is you want to add noise into the learning process of the artificial intelligence, and that noise helps generalize the problems that it solves. I think that's kind of interesting because it kind of explains a lot of other things, like how we as humans work and how this noise actually, um, affects our decision making.
Yeah, that is interesting. I don't know.
When you say,
Yeah,
can I
you know
ask
what's going
a
on?
question about that? That was interesting. When you say noise, do you just mean like chaos in the programming, like so that it's
Yeah,
not
in a
corrupted
sense. I
all
mean,
that
if you know what artificial intelligence is doing in the back end, it basically is trying to solve a problem, right? So if you guys have ever seen any graphs of what it does, it basically graphs a bunch of data and it tries to categorize it in a sense, right? And it's non-linear. And I don't know what you guys' background is, but that basically means that you can't just draw lines to categorize the data. You have to draw curves. But AI does it in a multi-dimensional space. Okay. Now, I've worked with different algorithms and optimization problems, and what you find out is that what can happen is, let's say you have a plane. Let's say we just have a plane, and in that plane you have hills and valleys of problems, and you're trying to find the optimal solution. This could be which one is a cat, which one is what's the biggest number. It doesn't really matter. AI doesn't care. But what can happen with artificial intelligence is instead of finding the most optimal solution, you end up finding a local optimal solution. So you'll find a solution that is here instead of the globally optimal solution. And what it turns out is by adding noise into the system, you can maybe walk around this space a little bit further, diverge from this local area, and find a more optimal solution. In a sense, you're able to solve the problem better by traveling this multidimensional space. And that's why noise comes into the problem, and it actually helps you solve the problem a little bit better.
Can I ask
Can you
something?
define
though?
the noise?
How do you apply that to problems that are hard to quantify? That's
Well,
my problem. Like you can easily say, you can feed data of cats, but like how would you do something like feed data to an AI of like a philosophical question one might ask, like Aristotle or something. Feed data of good people. What makes a good person, right? That's very hard to quantify. And yet
yes,
these are the problems we have. So how
yes.
do you take, uh, I guess, moral or societal, I guess would be the better term. How do you take societal problems and turn them into database quantifiable ones that I can read on a spreadsheet?
That's a really tough question. Yeah, that's a tough question because, in a sense, what we're trying to do is almost map our human brain into an artificial intelligence because what makes us as humans unique is I'm going into some other ideas that I have about what it means to be human, but one thing that makes us unique is this empathy. This is where kind of like these moral truths come from or whatever, right? And the reason empathy exists is because we need empathy in order to be able to collaborate, because by collaboration we're able to produce better, work better together, which makes us puts humanity ahead. And I think in a sense, what you're asking here is like, how do we make these AIs help us solve our human problems? In a sense, the answer to that would be to make the AIs more human.
But the problem with making an AI more human is exactly the very same thing I mentioned earlier, which is we are horrible at solving our own problems. So if all we do is make a giant omniscient human, then what we've done is created something that has the same problems with biases and things that we do, yet can do it at, hundreds of a millisecond, make horrible decisions every hundredth of a millisecond, the same way we make horrible decisions on a slower time frame.
Yeah, and it's true. And what my thoughts on that is that most likely, I don't think we can come up with a single algorithm that can do it. My gut feeling is that honestly, probably there is no optimal solution when it comes to humans' problems. There's probably multiple solutions. Like, for example, let's say Democrats and Republicans, they have different ideas of what life should look like, right? And while probably if you were to grab a bunch of Republicans and put them in a single state, they probably would be pretty happy with the laws that they would come up with. And if you were to grab a bunch of Democrats and put them in a single state, they probably would also be really happy. No guns, whatever. The Republicans love guns, and then you have them all together. But the problem is that in society, it's more complex than that, right? So you have everybody mingling together, and everybody wants what they want. So in a sense, I think we can't really solve it because there's also differences between people that you can't really swift through. So I think that it's not really possible to train an AI to solve all of humans' problems. You probably some general problems, but not all of them.
So why do it then?
Why couldn't it? What?
The humans instead of changing the program.
I couldn't really hear you.
It all boils down to programming humans through propaganda. We need to change the propaganda and streamline it. We want to streamline it so that everybody thinks the same way, kind of like how China's doing it, where everybody's on the same page. Look at how productive the country is. Then you look at a country like this, nobody can agree upon anything, and our country's going down the shitter. Our economy's going down the shitter, and we don't get anything done. So I think we need to start programming our humans a little more efficiently. Shut down the internet. Let everybody think the same way. That way, it doesn't matter what's the correct thing. It just matters that we all agree, so we can stop fighting, and that way we can start getting back to work. Because that's really the most important thing. It's just about deciding what we agree.
I do not measure my happiness in terms of a GDP. I'm sorry. That I very much disagree with what you said. But like I said previously, I consider myself a rational person, so I'm not going to make it an emotional argument.
Well, so random, okay, let's have one base reality that we all run off of. Is that whatever base reality you select is definitely going to bias certain demographics versus other demographics. So it's in every demographics interest to, try to push for the policy that most benefits their particular sets of talent, right? And on top of that, I think there's a lot of rigorous study done by a lot of bureaucrats and actuarialists who actually try to come up with a rigorous definition for happiness, such that you can create market incentives to maximize that. Unfortunately, it does seem rather impossible to define what happiness is in the abstract, because it seems almost like a mythical and philosophical idea rather than an actual physical one. They have studies when it comes to making maximal pleasure, but that kind of hedonistic tendency doesn't lead to what is defined as happiness or true flow states or whatever you want to define it as. And I think that's just an active area of research, and there's a lot of debates and arguments as to what you should do and what not do. But I mean, as far as it goes, it's an open problem.
Yeah. The Aristotelian idea of eudaimonia, which is not really happiness, but more translated as well-being or fulfillment. I would say that's different than pleasure. But anyway, that was just.
So how do you manufacture that and create that a sustainable state of fulfillment? It seems as though humans eventually get kind of tired once they find fulfillment. And there's other studies of just I don't know, decay, mental decay, and whatnot.
I would
Right,
say
so
you tailor it to the individual person, but
not to
I've
cut
been
this short,
rambling.
but we're at that time where not only do we need to move on, but we need to gaze at the side of the room and the back of the room, and there you can see our Discord, where if you follow that, you'll be added to our server where we come up with questions, ideas, and make announcements on. You can find our YouTube channel, which this recording will be on. You can find our Twitter, which announcements will be on. The recording will also be on Spotify, iTunes. I can't remember any of the
I
other
was
podcast
trying to look at the
platforms.
Spotify channel. I couldn't find it. What's it called?
Real Talk Alt.
Real Talk Alt? Oh, okay.
Yep.
I'll listen
We
to it when I
have
drive to work.
we have a couple of series that we're doing. We have 3 of them. We have this. We also have our sister event, if my main man would put that up for us, which is on Mondays at a half hour past the same time, which is more centralized. Like, instead of me having to cut people off in that interesting topic, you just continue. It's all one question. You just keep going down rabbit holes, and it's a lot more free than this one. And
I really like
we
this
also
event because I'm sorry to just cut you off, but because you aren't like as talkative, you let other people talk and get their chance, and I appreciate you as a host because of that. Sorry to cut
Thank
you
you.
off. I just wanted to let that be known. He's actually a very good host. Because a lot of people just like to talk and talk when they're the host. Go ahead.
Well, so and we also just launched a podcast, and we will draw people from this event and bring on to do a real podcast with real faces and
That sounds good. That's cool. That's
more
cool.
realistic
Yes,
topics.
good. Yay.
That will be every 2 weeks and is uploaded on our YouTube channel and on the podcast platforms like Spotify, iTunes,
Cool.
and all of that. We're on episode 2, and the last episode was actually really interesting. We had a good conversation with a transgendered sex worker.
Trump.
What? So, yeah, check those out. And it's also just about time to move on to our next question. So I'm just going to find that real quick. Give me 2
Nice.
seconds.
Hello.
Okay, so let me just also explain the rules because a lot of new people have joined and they probably have no idea what's going on. So, welcome to Real Talk. If you've never been here before, here's how we run stuff. I will pose a question, topic, philosophy, legal conundrum, logical downfall, and we'll all go around in the circle and discuss, and everyone will have a chance to give their opinions, philosophies, your dog's name, etc., and we abide by these rules while we're going around in the circle. The 2-minute rule, number 1, meaning that try to keep your point down to 2 minutes. We will have a time to open up where you do not have a 2-minute restriction, but try to keep your first point to 2 minutes so everyone can have a chance to talk. Rule number 2, respect the circle, meaning when we're going around a circle, don't interrupt or try to argue with someone while we're still going through the circle. Rule number 3, ask over the God door, meaning if you want to talk about a religious thing, you're allowed to talk about religious culture. Christians, they have prayer. You're not, but the rule is, if you're going to talk about the beliefs of Christianity or the acts of Christianity, then ask the group, see if they're comfortable with that. If they're cool, go ahead. Rule number 4, respect when the talk is over, like we did now. If we're trying to move on with us. And rule number 5, shut up when needed, because needed is often. So the question is, also, another point I probably realized I should bring up more often. When I pose a question and it's really vague, that's on purpose. No question I ask is vague on accident. It's for you to interpret. If you want to, talk about the societal downfalls of the Frog Kingdom, you're welcome to. And if that's how you interpret the question. It's however you want to apply it, whether that's to your life, whether that's the globe, whether that's to anything. So, the question is, Is it possible to care about everything?
No, I think it's utterly impossible, and I can use real life. I can use real life experience for that.
I don't care about you. I don't care.
Yeah. So as I was saying, it's
That's
impossible to
just
care about everything as a human. Can I open the God question real quick? Do I have to keep asking that every time I bring up God? Is that okay, guys?
More people join.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
fine,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Do it.
So,
No,
there's God and there's man. God can care about everything. He's the only one who's even able to do it. Okay. He's like the ultimate multitasker. Okay. For humans, we can't. It's impossible. We're mortal. Okay. We're not magical beings. Just think about your jobs, right? You all have jobs, and there's certain things that you have to prioritize. You have the most important things, and then you have the less important things. You're not going to be able to do every single thing while you're at work, and this goes for life as well. You're not going to be able to do everything in your life. You have to pick what's important to you and do it, because life is short, and there's only so much time in the world. So, you gotta prioritize. God will take care of the rest, but you worry about what you can take care of. That's all I have to say about that.
Alright.
Yeah, I think you should. It's good to care about yourself instead of looking at other people and making yourself busy with other things that don't really are in your benefit. So I don't think it is possible to care about every single thing, and it's not that question could get like very deep. But I have to go take a piss, so I'll just pass it on.
Alright. Lola.
I think you don't have to care about everything. I don't think you should care about everything. I think you should care about like yourself, your family, and your God, and that's pretty much it.
Alright. Gallons.
Yeah, that one's pretty easy. The answer is no. I don't think we can care about everything.
Nice.
I agree. I think it's actually impossible to care about everything. And to go a little further, it would be detrimental to even try to care about everything. Because we all have, we all have this one little, corner of the universe that we can control, and that we can affect. And since the God door has been open, what I believe is that everything else is left up to God. So we can only, care about what we do, how we treat each other, what decisions and choices that we make, and then our results, all everything else that happens, in the world, I leave that up to God. So I'll pass it on. That's my opinion.
Alright, Gringy.
I have no idea whether it's possible to care about everything. I think it's pretty damn important to at least try to care. Try to care about as many things as you possibly can, because it makes you a more compassionate and well-rounded person. Just to try and see people's lives, trying to understand people's issues. Not to get too political at the moment, but right now there are riots going on in America, and due to thanks to those riots and thanks to those protests, sorry, I say riot. I meant to say protests. There are protests going on in America right now, and due to those protests, there are people who are protesting all around the world to consolidate with those people. And just the ability to consolidate something of a message, just the ability to consolidate, I believe you're right, I think we should change this. I think that can be incredibly powerful, especially on a global scale.
Before we continue, I'm not well informed. I mean, I'm well informed on what's going on in America, but on a global scale, people who are not in the U.S., is the protest spreading around the world? Do people know?
Yeah.
Or it's just
Yeah,
the
it's in
American
Poland,
franchise?
it's in
It's all over the world.
England, it's in many countries
Yeah,
that
it's all
don't even
over.
really have black people in them.
There's certainly some in
Don't
the
say
UK
England
here.
doesn't have any.
Well, I'm saying like Poland.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think like let's
Is
say
that all in
Eastern
England
European
anyway?
countries haven't had protests, but basically everywhere else almost.
Excuse me, sir. What do you mean by like protesting, like going on the street? Yeah, I'm protesting myself because I really don't like that man died like that because that's really just that really
Horrible.
just
Yeah.
why would y'all do that? Like
Yeah,
he
but
didn't have really die like that. He said that he couldn't breathe. He stayed there on his neck. Like why would you do that? He stayed there on neck when he said he couldn't breathe. And he went unconscious, and he stayed there on his neck
Right.
for like
Well,
2
that's a good
minutes.
point.
What
We
is wrong with
are
you?
all
Like,
aware
why
of
would you
that,
do
and
that?
that is not the question.
That is not really good.
Not
That's
even
really
what they're
bad.
protesting
But you are
Like
right.
that.
You are
at
right.
all.
Though,
It's supposed to be
Riley.
meant to die.
Renesh,
People die
Renesh,
another
if
way.
that
That's
wasn't
really bad.
recorded and it posted on YouTube and Facebook, would you have cared?
Yes, I would.
Anyway,
Yeah, I would've cared.
we got to stick to the question. We're
All
still
right,
running the
let's
circle.
focus. Let's focus.
That was my bad for interrupting. All right,
Like,
good feeling.
I really
Thanos.
didn't like that he had to die like that. That is like so just it breaks my heart that somebody has to see
Okay.
someone die by a
Can you
bullet.
hear me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, since the God door has been open, this should be really short and easy for me to say and for a lot of people to understand. Can we or should we, can we care about everything? Should we care about everything? I'm not sure which one was the question, but the answer is most definitely yes, period. Somebody brought up God and they actually made this statement that only God can do it. I'm not going to call anybody out, but let me just say God created everyone in his image. And then he also gave us his son, Jesus, which actually lived a human life. Hence the phrase, what would Jesus do? So don't tell me it cannot be done. It can't be, you're going to just die. You're going to cripple up. You're going to just have so many issues if you do it. It can be done. Should we? Again, we should. And I leave you with this last statement. When Jesus died on the cross and rose before he ascended into heaven, he said, I leave you with a new commandment. Most people are familiar with 10. And even from the Old Testament, there are more than 10. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, there's a total of 30. Well, when Jesus went to heaven after resurrection, he said, I leave you with a new commandment, which means now there's 31. And it was simply love every man the way I've loved you. And in order to do that, for those that don't understand what that means, you must care about everything, everyone. I'm done.
So,
Vote on closing the God door once it's been open.
You go, Riley. Oh, shit.
Still don't like that.
sorry, what was that, Davey?
Can we vote to close the? I respect what you said. The God door was indeed open, and I'm glad you found comfort in the teachings of your religion. I'm wondering, as for the group, for that
Yes, that is
particular direction,
the
can we then close
stipulation.
the
If
God
someone's
door now?
uncomfortable with the God door, it shall close. I apologize.
But thank you. Thank you. For,
Good point. I don't
that, I
think
don't-
we've ever
I don't
run
know.
into that before. Whether we close it or not.
Well, can one person close the God door though? That's the question.
I thought you
Yeah,
just
it should be more than just one.
Yeah.
Should be a group
Oh,
decision.
You're free to
Yeah, we could take a vote.
Excuse
What do you
me.
think?
Just real quickly, I just want to say that, like she said, can we close it? I believe we can close it, but because you have to ask permission in the first place to open it, which before I spoke, 2 other people commented on it, which was why I gave the comment that I did. I
Right,
think at this point for her request, it is closed. But should this gentleman or this gentleman, this young lady decide that they want to talk about it again, they at that point, based on your rules, should then say, can we open the God door again?
Yes.
But I've already given my answer, so I'm done with the God door. So it doesn't matter what's going to happen now. It's going to be from them.
Okay. Well,
Sounds good.
great.
Thank you.
Moving on. Lubitz, do you know what's going on? Or did you just join in?
I'm new.
How
Sorry
do you
about
block
this.
something like this?
I'm just kind of chilling out and seeing how this goes. You can ignore me for now.
All right. Bebop, you know what's going on?
I'm just listening at the moment. Excuse me? You have a specific topic that we're all on right now? Or is it just been to whoever talks?
You have a specific
Sorry, I didn't hear a word of that.
She's asking what the topic is.
Is it possible to care about everything? Like,
Oh, yes, I think so. If you're open to it.
right? F.
Oh, hi, can you hear me? I think I've a technical problem. Can you hear me?
Give us a second.
Yeah, we can hear you, mate.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we can hear
Thanks.
you.
I had a technical problem earlier. So yeah, first of all, just a quick technical update there. You asked about the situation regarding protests elsewhere. I live in the UK. There were tens of people protesting literally outside my front door, round the corner 40 or 50. So there have been protests within the UK. Peaceful, very simple, very clear protests. So that has been happening. So
The protests are about the situation in your country or the situation everywhere?
So it's become conflated, actually. There was a kind of discourse that went on that said, well, actually, this is only an American problem. And then people started saying, well, actually, look at the data in the UK, and it is a problem as well, you know? So it was sort of saying, I guess it was saying, this is a trigger. We should look at it in our own context as well. So we're expressing solidarity and looking at our own context. You know, I mean, the area I live in, I actually kind of feel really positive about. About 20 years ago, I lived here when I was a student, and it was a very divided area by race. Now it's a very integrated area by race. Really great. You know, I'm Caucasian. My next door neighbours are Afro-Caribbean. My next door neighbours on the other side are Muslim, from India originally. Good social mixing. It's all great, you know. It's a model area, and it didn't used to be like that. But that's off topic. Except, I think we have to say, what is everything, right? What is everything? So can we care for everything? On one level, everything is those things which I am aware of. And then we can, yeah? On another level, I think I mentioned this in a discussion with someone else in one of these spaces recently. There's this interesting idea about spheres of influence and areas of concern, right? If I'm concerned about everything, but I can't influence it, that's really damaging for me, yeah? Could I open the God door a little bit and then also open the God door of the Buddha a big bit?
That's up to the people here.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Fine with me.
Yes.
Okay, so just to open the God door a little bit, I'd like to slightly disagree with Good Feline. What I understand that Christ's last statement was, love everybody as you love your neighbor, not as you love yourself. That's a distinction which is not often drawn out in Christianity, right? That is as I read the Gospels. Okay, so that's the little chink I want to open the God door. And then to open the Buddha door, people I know who are very, very highly involved Buddhists would say that it is possible for a fully realized Buddha to care for everything. There's a Buddha within us all, and it's a very high level of realization. So it's a major challenge, and if you reach that level, then you can. So I can't comment beyond that. I know people who would say that. I don't have sufficient experience to make a statement beyond that. So we can close all the doors there if you like.
Right. JVB.
Thanks. Just popping in. how I'm hearing the question seems to be about factions. I think, can you care about everything? Where you put your focus? Is that it?
The original question is it possible to care about everything?
Is it possible? On a practical level, I'll take it politically. When I think of that question, it's never surprising to me. It's disappointing to me that there can be such divisions in every single point. It seems as soon as somebody puts up a sign for something, there's be somebody, especially with social media, you see in the comment section, you go, "Oh, that's obviously a good intention." And then the comments will be, "How dare you send the intention that way? In context, there's the opposite, or that's not including the data." So already there's a conflict. It seems to every group, the feminists will be divisions in them. The religions will have and subsets of religions and subsets of the Democrat. So is it possible maybe to make everybody happy, or to serve for everybody to be able to have their equal and independent things across the board equally? Everybody, everything. See, when it gets that broad for me, it's hard for me to address the question. So to take it back, then very small, is it possible to care about everything? I think when I think of just myself and my own little hula hoop here, I think it is good for me to train that way in my mind. My mind doesn't always do that, but I think it's a good intention for me to, when I start my day and end my day, just take in my reality and know I'm not the ultimate. I am not the ultimate reality. I am part of the ultimate reality, and everything's okay, and I care about everything. So on that level, when it's inside my hula hoop, I can care about everything. In a nutshell, 2 minutes, I guess, for the moment. Thanks.
All right, Jason.
Yeah, can you care about everything? I think that's a very vague question. So I mean, I'm just gonna try to interpret it in a very vague way. In terms of like can you practically do that? I don't think it's possible as a human being to do that, because there's just a limit as to what you can perceive. There's probably some civil war in some place in the world that I have no clue about, and do I care about that? No, because obviously I don't know about it. And second, like, is it practical to really do that? I would also advise, like, no, it's not really practical to do that. You'd saturate your attention. You wouldn't get anything done. If you really care about something, you can focus in on it and actually try to influence it and try to make changes to the best of your ability. I mean, I think that's what most people should do. Try to not be super autistic and over focused to the point where you ignore like legitimate information. What? Oh yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like using it in the meme context, not like on the medical context. But yeah, just being like super like narrow-minded and ignoring like legitimate information. But in general, like my take is like you can't pay attention or you can't care about everything just because it's just like you're not going to get anything done if you do that.
All right, Mello.
Yeah, you can't care about everything. Does that give people an excuse to say they care about nothing and be, super nihilistic and like nothing matters? No, no, it does not. And actually, yeah, wasn't he like in a jar in the dark for a year? I forgot. I haven't read my philosophy in a while. But anyway, I thought it was very interesting. I will go ahead and lift up the curtain a little bit. I was actually the person who put this question in the Discord. And I thought that it would get a little bit of a wider discussion, but everybody, when they thought everything, immediately it went to a social place and a political place. Whereas I was taking it more literally to think the human brain can only multitask so much. There have been studies that say You can't really look at and pay attention to multiple things at once. So while yes, that is true when you think of some of these social and political issues, yeah, I do believe that you can't necessarily pay attention to everything. But also, how many of you here that drive a car know exactly how your car works? Every single wheel, every single piece of the car. You can't. No one can. I don't care if you're a mechanic. So when you say, can you care about everything? You have to choose where to put your attention. Some people put it on social things, like mostly has been discussed here. Other people put their attention towards what others would consider trivial. I wouldn't necessarily say that those trivial things are always as trivial as people think they are, but that's a whole other discussion. But when that was my point, is that we are finite, as our religious people would say. We can both agree on that. We are all finite. We can only pay attention to so much. And so that was kind of what I was trying to throw out there. And it was interesting the direction the conversation took. Okay, I'm done rambling.
Can I say
Right.
something?
So you can because now is the time where we open up if you want to agree, disagree, or
All right.
sacrifice someone to your
I want
deity.
to call out every single person that said that they care
Okay,
about
so
everything.
what I wanted to
Okay,
say.
go ahead.
Oh,
You can
so
go
we
first.
start back from the beginning, or we starting with
No,
me?
it's a speak first to be spoken over.
Oh, okay. So, what I wanted to say was for the gentleman that came after me. I don't know how he heard what he heard, but just briefly to open the God door. I did not say that God said love everyone as you love yourself. He said love everyone as I have loved you. That's what he said to his 12 disciples before he
was making
ascended
a
back
different
into
point.
heaven.
He was
Okay.
making
he's right
another
there.
point of love thy neighbor. It was two different things.
Okay. And the other thing that I just wanted to say briefly on what the last gentleman had to say, I'm listening to what everyone has to say, and I think we're getting confused with two words. The question is about caring. But yet when I hear everyone talk about it, and I'm sorry for the word everyone, because everyone didn't make this mistake, but a few have. I hear a lot of people say, be attentive to, have your attention. You can't be attentive to. You can't pay attention to. You don't have to pay attention to everything to care about everything. I care about the Muslims. I care about people dying. I care about the hungry. I name any topic in the world, even to the very most minute. I care about them all. Now, do I have my hand in every dish and do what he just said? Be attentive to. No. Try to solve. No. I care about everything.
Okay.
So that is why I said it is possible to care, which is what the question
Let me interject now. So listen,
I'm
you
finished.
and a couple other people have said the same exact thing. You care. You all care, right? Listen, it's easy to say that you care. It's easy to say that you care about something.
Who's
But,
talking? I'm sorry.
It's this person behind me. Are you good? Listen, it's easy to say that you care, right? It's easy. Oh, you care. You take the moral high ground, and it makes you look like a more, civilized and, a person who's just so reasonable. It's an easy thing to do. But the real question is, do you actually know what it is that you care about, or are you just saying it so that people give you social media likes, and it makes you seem like a more, civilized and cultured person? I can tell you, in quite honesty, that it's impossible. It's impossible for you to care about everything. It's easier to say that you care so that people like you more. And I think that most of the men here who are more rational and not emotional thinkers would agree with me. That's why, if you notice, most of the women took the emotional side. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when you say
Wow, that was real ignorant.
Yeah,
First of all,
I agree
I'm not going to
with
play.
you.
I'm not going to play kind of track record here, but I am a highly rational thinker. And when you say it's impossible, I think there's been a distinction not made between brains and minds. Both in the first topic about AI actually reopening that last topic, but moving on. And this topic, people are talking about, but Mellow Waves made the good point about the brain being finite. Yeah? And therefore you could only care for a finite amount of things. But that's only true if the mind equals the brain. Right? If the mind is something bigger than the brain, if the mind is something bigger than the brain, then maybe you can care for more. So your point.
Bigger than the brain?
So yeah, is the mind different from the brain? It's an important question.
Bigger than the brain?
Is it different from? The best wording I would say.
Does
You're
a
assuming
CEO
mind
of a company
equals brain.
clean the bathrooms?
Sorry, what?
Does a CEO of a company, of a Fortune 500 company, of a big company, does he go around cleaning the toilets? Oh, the toilet.
I couldn't tell you, but you know what? I'm in charge of a major. I'm in charge of a major. Well, actually, let me answer. I'm in charge of a major laboratory in the UK, and I do clean the bathrooms. It's one of my management principles. I do any job I would ask my colleagues to do. If there's some shit on the floor, I will clean it.
Well, then who's
I'm not a
doing
CEO.
your job? If you're cleaning the toilets, why aren't you doing your job?
I am doing my job. That is part of my
So you're
job
the
because it's
janitor.
leadership by example.
Hey,
We've gone off topic here, but my point it is part of my job.
Talk about
I would
factions.
say
It's
that
already
Why are
split
they
over like
paying you to clean the
nothing.
toilets? That's the question.
They're not paying me to clean the toilets. The point is, if I'm in the toilet and I find some shit on the floor, I'll clean it up.
Oh, so you're
I'm not
telling
going
me
to
you're the
go.
one shitting on the toilet? You're shitting on the floor of the toilets? And you're trying
No,
to
I'm not
pretend like
telling
you're
you that.
cleaning it
I'm
up?
telling you the opposite. And that is banal. That is just
That is
weak
banal.
sophistry.
That's fair. Look, we
I
don't want to
agree.
clean
I agree.
toilets. It's just an example. What I'm
Look,
trying
I
to say
have
is
cleaned toilets for a
somebody
job
with-
in the
with the-
past. It
with
doesn't
the
bother
big,
me.
The big IQ, the big smarts in the company, he's not going to waste his time doing the menial, robotic tasks. He's not going to waste his time doing that.
Well, do you know, Steve Jobs didn't work on that basis. Steve Jobs did the little stuff as well as the big stuff.
What did he do that was small?
He did on-the-ground programming.
That's exception, not the rule. We're talking about.
Bill
do you think
Gates
everybody
did
does
the
the same
on-the-ground
things?
programming. Who's used DOS?
Look,
Who's used
Steve,
DOS?
Steve Jobs is dead right now, right?
think we're
Well, that tells
starting
you
Yeah, but
something,
Bill
doesn't
Gates
it?
isn't. Bill Gates
shut up
isn't.
unneeded territory.
Bill Gates isn't. And Bill Gates programmed physically with his fingers.
Program physically.
Is anybody saying anything?
Yeah, I think you guys something cut off.
He might have programmed himself, but he didn't make every single UI element on the iPhone, okay?
Oh, he only made Windows. That's meaningless, right?
I mean, that means you have a big project, right? You're not gonna be working on every single thing. You're gonna work on the core and fundamentals, the foundation of the product. You're not gonna go around doing every single thing like sales and whatnot. That's the point that Smoke Weed every day is trying to make.
Yeah, I'm just a realist. I'm just stating how the world works. We do what we're good at doing. We do what we're what we have the time to do. But listen, social media has changed the way people think. It makes them want to be likable and
Okay, my
Yeah,
concern
I
is
got
again.
that point, and it's extremely cynical, especially in,
You don't have
in an
to do
anonymous
every-
cartoon circle like we're in. I mean, I'm certainly not speaking for friends. I don't have a following on this thing. It doesn't make any difference what I'm saying right now to anybody.
I wanted to
But
call you
this,
out too
it,
because
your
you spoke
point
about how people
your
on
point
comment
about
sections that we're
your
talking
point
about you were
everybody
talking
can't
about
care
on
for
comment
everything.
sections
Maybe
about
people
how
can't
people
solve
let
everything.
people speak.
People can maybe perhaps cannot solve everything, but people can certainly have a focus on a huge picture. They can
and whether you can make a point while thinking about something isn't actually engaging with something, that's a point, and at the same time, thinking is engaging with something. So, I mean, we can split off, we can divide every single sentence that anybody says about this. And
yeah, I would add to that and say,
I don't
like,
care who follows me on
the
Twitter for that.
concept is not whether you can do everything, it's whether you can care about everything. And I do think a CEO definitely cares about all the aspects of his company, even like how clean his employees' toilets are, right?
Absolutely.
Yo, JVB, if you care about everything, why'd you close the God door? You don't care about God?
That's not a question. I don't want I don't have an answer about whether God exists or not. I don't know the Bible. I don't want to spend 5 minutes in this forum
I thought you
learning
cared
about
about
the Bible
everything.
in particular. Yes, but
You
I
said you
can't
cared
solve.
about everything.
Can I bring up?
I say I care
one
about
point
everything on
very
certain
quickly,
levels, and on other levels I don't.
You only care about things that matter to you.
I care about things. It's like saying this is a different thing, but I'm saying that things can't always have a direct answer, and that there's a spectrum to answers. People say, is there free will or is it determinism? I think it's a spectrum. I think on some levels life is determinism. On another level, it's free will. Can you solve everything, or I mean, can you care about everything, or do you care about nothing? There's a point where I go, I don't care about. I turn off the news at some point because I can't care about it. And then I start looking at flowers, which again has nothing to do about socially. This is about being connected in the world. So it has nothing to do with how effective I can be about everything. Or, anyway, it's just different semantics.
Can I bring up a very short point? And I realize I have a tendency to ramble, so I will keep this as short as possible. I just wanted to say that the very point that this medium caused a communication breakdown, and that people are now going back and forth in an aggressive manner, and I'm guilty of the same thing. I did it earlier tonight to smoke weed every day. You know, I got a little personal, and I admit that. Part of the reason for that is because I, like everyone else in this room, is human, and so the very problems with whether you wanna call it, I would say human neurology, you know, the brain, whether you want to go a different direction, the human condition, all right, that is neutral and can be interpreted many ways. But the very problem with how the human condition works is that we can't seem to get along. And as a society, I think we need to figure that out. I don't know how we do it.
To be fair, Mello, this is a fighting round. This is mandated by the game. We're supposed to go
Again,
at
the
it with
cynical angle, the aggressive cynical. This is the fighting round.
Yeah, that's what this is called. Is it
already
not?
No,
Fake, is this
that
not
is
what
not
this
what it is.
No.
The point of opening up is to remove the restriction of the 2-minute rule and let people elaborate on their point, because a lot of people have other things. But I will say, I do not limit people's freedom of speech. If you have an opinion that's different than mine, I will not stop you talking because of it. But I will not allow people trying to talk over others to make their point more than the other person to make their point. That's freedom of speech.
I wasn't trying to limit any speech. I was just pointing that
No,
out.
not you, not you, man. Like when people were talking over people and not relenting.
Yeah, understood. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I think, anyways, moving on. I think we have time for one more question, and I'm just gonna find that real quick. Give me a second. Right. So, assume that at one point, this technology that a good chunk of us are participating in, VR, will become indistinguishable from real life. Right? You can no longer tell between what is virtual and what is real. A quick poll before we ask the question. Throw up a heart emoji if you would prefer to live in the world that you can alter, and throw up a sad face emoji if you would like to stay, and not because it's sad, just for an example, if you'd like to stay in the real world. This has a quick poll.
What if you can alter the real world?
Well, that's not part of the question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Wait, repeat the question.
I like
one more time?
hearts.
Sorry.
If you could distinguish between real life and VR, which one would you reside in
Which
if
one's
you
the real life
had
one?
the ability to choose?
Which one's the real world?
But wait, if
The
you
one
couldn't
you exist in
distinguish,
now.
then it wouldn't matter what you said.
So you're saying totally immersive
Just,
VR?
we know. That's, you spoiled
All
it.
right, I picked the real world. I don't even know what the heck the question was, but yeah.
Anyway, so the question is, if humanity was dying out, should we transfer ourselves to this aforementioned virtual world, or should we let humanity die out because that is the plan, or that is the what was intended to happen, or that is necessary to happen?
Well, I don't think humanity is intended to die out, number one. Number two, I think the only people that would prefer to live in an alternative universe are the people that are not happy living in the real world. Most of those people are, maybe jobless, losers, depressed. They don't really have a lot going for them. And, maybe they're confused about their gender, confused about their sexuality or whatever. But, there are plenty of people who are happy to be in the real world and that also know that, the world isn't coming to an end. Maybe for certain weak people, but there are plenty of people who know what they're doing and how to survive and how to create, offspring and play the game, because life is a game and people know how to win in life. And those people don't really see the need to run to a second alternative life. Oh, by the way, I'm on the PC. I'm not wearing a VR headset.
No, I know. That's what I said. A good chunk of us are.
Yeah.
I didn't.
I just felt
Yeah,
I felt like I just needed to say that.
Right. Hi.
Yeah, so I don't think running away from reality is anything good unless, not even unless, but like if you're not doing anything good with your life and you want everything spoon fed, you want everything ready and ready to consume right into your brain, then I think you would pick the heart emoji. But if you're enjoying life as it is right now, if you're actually if you're working on something, not just like consuming whatever guys consume nowadays, like music and videos and movies and whatnot. My point is, if you don't run from reality, if you have a good life, then I don't think there's a use for VR other than games and practical uses.
Right. Michael Jordan.
Well, like you said earlier on, and I wasn't aware of, it's our job when answering to interpret certain parts of the question. So, I mean, some people have interpreted that, if you lived in a virtual world, it would be easier than living in the real world. But you said when you posted that it would be indistinguishable from the real world. So that's how I took it. And I know you said that it was spoiled when someone said something, but that was exactly what I was thinking. At the same time, if it's indistinguishable, then what's the difference?
Right.
I mean, how could we even tell the difference? So I'm going to go ahead and assume that there is a difference between the virtual world and the real world, and I would choose to live in the real world. So I chose the sad face. I like the virtual world as an escape. You can come in, we can have a chat here where we didn't have to get in our car and drive somewhere. Have lively discussion. And it serves a function. But I really don't know how to express why I prefer the real world. It seems like something to me that is a choice that I have to make. I will not, sacrifice real life experiences for a what I believe a fake, virtual world. And that's my opinion. I'll pass.
Before we move on, just out of curiosity, on like that brings up a good question. Raise up a heart emoji if you would leave and like travel somewhere to participate in an event like this or some sort of structured discussion. If you would go out of your way to do this. Really? I wouldn't leave my house to host this. I I do this because
You guys are all gonna get the coronavirus.
just wondering. Grimsby.
Well, before I threw up a heart emoji at the very first question, but now I'm starting to, not because of what you love been saying, but I'm just been thinking over in my head, and I'm starting to change my mind. There are certain things in real life. If we're assuming that VR is, even in your circumstances, only used for as a form of escapism, even if, as you said, it's distinguishable. If it's still only used as escapism, then I think that there is certainly value in wanting to get away from your life. There are horrible things happening on a daily basis these days, and sometimes it's good for your mental health just to forget all that's happening. But to deny that they ever happened and to try and escape from it, I wouldn't go as far to say as what Smoke Weed Every Day was saying, that if you try to run away
Good point.
from the problems, that you're a loser and that you have something wrong and there's something wrong with you. But I think that trying to escape your problems by running into somewhere where they just don't exist, running away from your problems is what I'm trying to say isn't the answer.
No, please keep going. I'm very interested.
Good feeling.
No, that's all I have to say.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
When we amplify
Okay,
you,
because
it's
I
just
keep
so
getting that.
it plugs us. Yeah, it plugs you into all the headsets, so no matter how far away you are, you'll have the same volume for every person.
Yeah, I asked because I kept getting that notification telling me to unmute, but I shouldn't have been muted. So that's why I asked if you could hear me. But do I feel well, personally, I would stay in the real world, period. And it's just about being human to me. It's nice to have a VR world the way we have it today, with this room and so many other rooms and worlds, and a fun aspect of it. But I am indeed human, so I need contact. I like to touch people. I enjoy that occasional hug, kiss, whatever, things of which you can't do in VR. So yes, I would stay with the real world.
All right, Lewis, you know what's going on now, buddy?
I think so. I'll give it a shot. So I feel a little silly, but I would like some clarification. So the choice is, right now I can be either completely virtual, fully immersive, just an incredible VR, or I can be in real life and not have VR access ever again. Are these the two options? Okay.
Well, no, like you can still have your headset and all that, but you wouldn't be in this. You would it's your consciousness that would be in virtual.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Well, my thought of VR is that it's an expansion of consciousness. There's more you can configure. There are more places. There are creations that couldn't possibly exist in the real world. So to me, it's more exciting than the real world. And so I would absolutely opt to go to the real world. In contrast to what you were saying, it's escapism, weak people are drawn to it. To me, I could see more intense competition. I could see competition on planes that have never even existed before. That's exciting to me. I feel like I've experienced the real world quite a bit. I'm not going to reveal my age, but why not try something? Why not try a new frontier? And that's all I got.
Okay.
So first of all, let me apologise for floating here. It's not some kind of ego thing. I went to the toilet, took my headset off, came back,
Click
reset
in
my
your
guard.
left thumbstick.
Sorry, what do I have to do?
Click in your left thumbstick. Press your left thumbstick as you would a button.
Oh, is that better? Am I in the normal place now? Is that better?
What do you on?
I want to be on the same level as everyone
No,
else.
are you on Quest?
I'm on
Rift?
Quest. I'm just not very good with
Quest?
this shit.
Okay.
Quest,
so
yeah.
Your left thumbstick, press it like a button.
No, it's
Oh,
the
the
right.
thumbstick.
No, it's
There
not
you
the
go.
thumbstick. It's the.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So you learn something every day. But actually, that shows an interesting point, of course, because in the real world, I know how to move around very easily. Here, I don't. But I think your question was that the VR was essentially identical, right? And
identical, but not unchanging.
Right? Yeah. I get it. The real world and the VR world aren't unchanging either. There are people like Elon Musk who believe that we are in a VR, right? We're in a simulation, yeah? I think his argument is banal, personally, even though I have a lot of respect for him. But I would say that we are probably in an illusion, right? When you go around day to day, what you perceive, what is the real world, right? You know, what is the real world? We only perceive things that come through our sensory apparatus, you know? I know there's infrared, there's ultraviolet, there's all sorts of other ways of perceiving things, right? So we do live in a virtual world anyway. And one of the reasons I actually really enjoy being in this VR is when I take my headset off, it reminds me that the real world, in big inverted commas, is itself virtual. It's not the real world. So I think the question is kind of almost unanswerable because I could be living in a virtual world anyway.
Great.
I was thinking that it would be great if I could eat or experience physical sensations that keep me alive in the real world, except just when I have my social interactions, I'm in virtual. But there's potential with haptic experience. I think if I could be fully immersed, I would totally choose the VR world. Because if I could still experience that sensation of eating, or even of pain, if I could still experience all of life in VR mentally, and I don't know what the difference is, sure, I'd go with VR. I think there's 1,100,000 plateaus to discover in this world. Yeah.
I want another quick poll. Can we get an emoji if you are in VR or have been in VR and when you got out of it, it was totally like a mind freak, like your hands didn't feel real? Because I had that experience personally. Yeah.
Yeah, I started using the same mannerisms, and I totally. This is just with a headset. So.
KVB.
Oh, hi. My daughter's trying to get in a gate, but anyway, she should have brought a key. Do I care? Well, I will in a few minutes. Literal? But there's another way around. And she may even be in here. I don't know because I am in VR, all hooked up, and I'm not taking the headset off quite yet. This again, at what point are we talking about handing it over to for what things are VR better than this reality that I have in real life that I don't have as much control over or control over in other ways? I think it comes to a point like if I didn't care about death, then yeah, I guess VR would be better. But I love my cat, love my daughters, and I love, my flowers. I love reality without a headset on even more. I'm wondering if there's another way also to look at this question about, is it would I give up the life that I have for a different life? And occasionally I think that, and then I remind myself of that question. And when I find myself in envy of somebody, I'll go, oh, but really, would you want to be that person? And that question brings me back to a lot of gratitude for what I'm actually doing. And I think I'll go let my daughter in. Bye, you guys. Nice seeing you.
Adios. All right, Jones.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the question is pretty interesting, and there's many ways I can take this. I kind of want to hear what Smokeweed has to say after everybody responds, but basically, I'm assuming here that I'm making a couple assumptions, and one of them is that it's basically indistinguishable from reality. That includes things like pleasure. I know Big Ray was talking about pleasure and experiencing that part of reality. I would agree with her on that scope of things. If I would like to enjoy things. Now, Smokeweed made me think a couple things, specifically the idea of like being a loser and all that, and like a loser who would choose a virtual world. And I was kind of thinking about it a little bit because I feel like I would choose a virtual world, but in the real world, I'm not a loser. So I was like, why do I feel that way? And I think the reason I feel that way is because when I think of virtual reality, I think of less boundaries, right? So when I think of being able to be in this fake world and being able to change the world around me, if anything, it excites me to think that I can change the size of the rooms I'm in, to change the place I am in, to be able to teleport and all this stuff. Like all that sounds really cool to me. And I do like the real world, but if you can make it pretty indistinguishable, I don't know. I kind of feel like I wouldn't mind being in a virtual reality.
Do you want me to respond to this now, or do you want me to wait till the end?
After, yeah.
Okay.
Wait till we open it.
So, I don't know. And if I answer the question exactly as it's asked, would you go to a virtual world? Really, my answer would be it depends on if I would be able to then use that to make myself a better person, or to not just experiences or pleasure, or how it would affect me as a human being. But then I also think about it a little bit differently, because what is virtual? What does that mean? Because the world is made up of abstractions, right? What does it mean when we say something is real? Is money real? It's real in the sense that we all agree that I give you $1, you now have $1, but did anything actually happen there physically as far as like the physics of the universe and atoms? Well, besides some material, paper material going from one person to another, then no. So I'm thinking of it in those terms of what is it we define as real? Are relationships real? Well, they certainly manifest through our physical interactions with each other, and then how our minds change because of that. So that means that a virtual world would be just as real as the quote unquote real one. So in those terms, when you think about, I think we really have to define what we mean when we say real, because there are a lot of things in the world, and I'm not even going where I think Smoke Weed would go when he says things that exist that aren't necessarily easily perceptible. But even if you think about other things that everyone would agree on, like relationships between people, or rule sets, really all it is rule sets that define how we live. And some of those are defined by people, some of those are defined by nature, and it just depends on which ones you prefer, and which ones you are able to interact with them. So that would be my answer there.
Hi.
Yeah, so I think the idea of giving Africans and degenerates VR lives would be one of the best ways to raise them. Like black people who keep populating with lives that don't matter or contribute anything to society don't need to exist anymore. So I would say having a VR live would be useful for some use cases.
Did I mishear him, or did he say something very racist there?
He
can,
did.
Can you repeat that? Because it's kind of robotic. I couldn't hear what you
You
said.
should repeat that last.
It was also very skippy.
Oh, it's better. It's better. Could you just repeat the whole thing?
Or the second part.
I can't hear
I can't.
him.
I can't really hear him.
I want to
Yeah.
hear.
What you
Can he
just said
rejoin? Can he rejoin?
is
and
one of the
can
most
we come back to
insane.
the point?
Just crowd next to him.
Hi. Just like leave and come back, and we'll come back to that point when you return.
Oh, specifically,
Do
go to
we have
settings
to?
and hit re-enter. Or because
okay, he'll be
if
back.
their event's over, so if you leave, you won't be able to re-enter the space.
You just call black people degenerates? Jesus fucking Christ, man.
That was
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh,
Okay,
he's back.
back.
Hello.
Oh, he's
I
back.
think he's back. Okay.
Did your mic fix?
Can you speak?
Yeah, testing,
Okay,
1, 2, 3.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was saying like it would be good if we give Africans and degenerates VR lives. That way we can erase them and not have to deal with them anymore, or like deal with black people who populate with like lives that
Get out of here.
Listen,
Is this guy a troll?
contribute anything to society. So like,
It's
why
gotta
would
be
you
a
want
troll.
criminal
There's no way
born
this.
to your
He's
country?
obviously
They,
trolling. He's got
Let
this
him talk.
sweet
He has an
German
opinion.
accent. What? Let him talk.
Whoa.
He just said we should
Right.
wipe out
No.
black
Okay.
people.
So
You're
no,
saying let him
there is
talk?
freedom of speech in here. But if you're
Why'd you
obviously
kick him out?
just trying to get a reaction like he was, then
Well, I have
It's
something to
different.
say about that because that's ridiculous.
What you
Wait for
just
the,
said
wait for the next
is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
That's all I had to say.
All right,
where
let's
the
move
hell
on.
did you get that?
Oh, that was great.
But on the topic, there's a show that just came out on Amazon called Upload, and it's about this exact topic, and it's really interesting. It's a comedy, but
Good
it's
show.
it's really good. It's interesting. Yeah, that's all.
Great. So it would be the time to open up, but we are 15 minutes over time just because I thought we were having a good conversation until that man. Yeah. So this is the end. I would love for y'all to come back on
When are you guys uploading
Wednesdays
on
and Sundays.
Spotify and YouTube and stuff?
Yeah, I'm getting to it. On Wednesday and Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also come to our sister event tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Hosted by that man standing over there, real suspicious like. That is, it's more in depth than one question. So there's a lot more rabbit holes. I'll also aid your attention to the side of the room and the back of the room where you can find our Discord, where you can join our server and pose questions, ask us questions, interact with us. I want to say like 30% of us in this room right now are already on the Discord, and you can talk to us. You
Yeah, I'd
can,
like
you know,
to
give
join
us
that. That'd
ideas
be
and
fun.
feedback and all that. Find our YouTube channel, which this recording will be on, and also on the Spotify. It's also on iTunes. It's on Pocket Cast, Castbox, 20 other podcast platforms. Plus, unbeknownst to all of you, this was live streamed on Twitch, which I'm starting to do now. I don't know if it worked out perfectly, but it was.
Hi, Mom.
So, yeah,
Hey,
this
Twitch
is
TV, yeah.